Welcome to Courage Zone, episode 17. My name is Sergio, and I'm your host. Our aim on this episode is to provide a safe space for discussing the realities faced by survivors of CSA, raise awareness about the impact of CSA, and explore ways to support those affected. We understand that this topic may be distressing for some listeners, so we want to remind you to take care of yourself as you engage with this content. On this episode, we have a very special guest. Welcome, Stewart.
Hey, thank you.
Stewart brings valuable insights and personal experiences to our discussion today. So we hope that by sharing these stories and information, we can contribute to a greater understanding and encourage meaningful change. So if you or someone you know is affected by CSA, we want you to know that support is available, and we'll provide the details on how to get help by the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us on this important journey. And so let's start the conversation. Guess we'll be conducting a small little interview with Stewart. And so first of all, Stewart, welcome again. Appreciate it.
Sergio. Appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
You are my first interview. I'm no longer a virgin.
No, I know that's right. There's words used, but yeah, definitely. Yeah.
First of all, can you share a bit about your journey and how you arrived about this in your life?
Good question. And again, I want to thank you for having me on your podcast. This is very, very important to me. So a little outline of myself. My name is Stewart. As you know, I am also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. So this has been a very interesting journey, just even saying that. So my journey started out, my healing journey, I'll be specific, started over 14 years ago, but my CSA started when I was a child. I'm going to be very gentle how I talk about that, but because I want you to keep listening. So I will tell you this. I was abused from both sides, male, female, from a very, very young age. It carried on until I was about 15, 16 when I learned to fight back. But with me saying that left me with a lifetime of struggling with addictions, not trusting anybody, struggling with personal boundaries for myself and towards others, very angry person. I talked about relationships. Well, relationships, never being able to stay in an intimate relationship, never being able to keep friends. So my level of trust towards myself and others was basically not there. So therefore, it led me to a lifetime of, personal struggles, mental health struggles, which nobody talked about. Mm-hmm. And this is why I'm really glad you're talking about this and in dealing with this, because this is such an important topic that needs to be discussed, internationally, yes, nationally, and there's never enough to be said about that. So in my story, I had a very, very crazy life. I talked about addictions and poor relationships. The funny part was, I think about all the things I was always able to stick with. I was always able to carry a job and keep it.
Wow.
Right? But at the same time, with that, obviously they never knew my experience, but it was also my way of feeding my addictions.
You know what? Since you say that, Stewart, I did the exact same thing. I took on a part-time job when I was a young boy.
Yeah.
When my abuse started.
Yeah.
At the age of 12, I started picking crop.
Yeah.
Picking tomatoes,
yeah,
bushels of tomato, yeah, and every large bushel of tomatoes would get me $20.
That's a lot.
Back in early 80s,
it was a lot.
So I know where you're coming from. And I was also feeding my addiction, which was drug and alcohol, yeah, as well. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's quite all right. And I'm happy that you're saying that and related, because I'm almost 100% sure. And I can't speak for everybody. I know a lot can probably relate to what we're just talking about.
Definitely.
And this is part of the collateral damage of what happens to a person that's experienced childhood sexual abuse.
Right.
I could use the acronym CSA, but I'd rather just say it right out like it is, and it's not beat around in the bush. But anyway, that was collateral damage, and if I can use that in that context, that's how it happened to me. So therefore, it was a lifetime of, never knowing who I was, no identity, and even to this day, I know who I am. I mean, I'm still struggling with where I belong, and and where I fit in sometimes. Although I think I pretty much figured that out, but there's still a few more pieces I'm trying to figure out. But as a person overall, through all that experiences, oh my gosh, I think of all the relationships I've gone through, not just intimate, but also friendships. And to imagine that I walked away from all those.
Yeah.
Feeling it wasn't worthy to have those.
Yeah.
Right? And not knowing how to communicate. Was a huge thing. But when you don't like yourself or love yourself, then that really hinders that ability to understand those parts of communicating with others.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing I really discovered through my healing processes. Oh, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. And maybe others can relate to this. You may be struggling how to communicate with others, not knowing how to talk. Well, it's maybe from that experience that's just allowed you to do that because, well, I'll speak for myself. I wasn't able to trust anybody.
Okay.
And not only that, but being a man gives it another turn as well. Most cultures, even here in the West, we don't talk about this.
Right.
And to add on top of that, when I talk about culture, if you're coming into the West from another country, and depending on what culture you're in, you really didn't talk about it. And if you did, I know even from my side, when I did talk about it, nobody did anything about it, and I was told to, just take it like a man and be done with it.
I know exactly how that is because my culture, I come from South America, and a man is a man. Yeah. Man doesn't cry. That's man doesn't show emotion. Yeah. Man doesn't share feelings. Right. Man don't even hug. Mm-hmm. Right? And so you have a certain stigma that goes with the title of being a man. Yeah. And so, but as I've come to realize that it's very important to talk about, what's happening inside. Mm-hmm. Because if we keep everything inside, like it happened to me, which at the age of 36, I think it happened to me was I went through a major panic attack one day driving to work. And I didn't know that it was a panic attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. On my way to the doctor's office, because instead of going to work, I called the doctor and I went straight to her office. And on the way there, I started to get a blurred vision, which I couldn't see. I had to get off the highway and drive the inner roads to get to my doctor's office. And that's when the first time I ever said something to my doctor. And because she says, what's going on? Like your blood pressure is like a can of Coke away from having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, it feels like I'm having a heart attack. He goes, no, you're having a panic attack. She says, what's going on? So when I told her about being abused as a child, she then went, now it makes sense of everything about you. And I was like, what? And so there were other health issues. And this was all raised because I was bottling everything inside. So anyway, I know exactly how you feel about that.
And that's just one thing. I mean, I can think of other things I used to do as well. Like, for example, if something happened, something like a fight or something like that, or as an example, or something was wrong or there was words said, what I would often do is I would often isolate for, like, I would not even go to work for a week. I would stay in my place. Right. And not talk to anybody, not answer my phone. Back to days when we didn't have cell phones.
Yes.
Right? And I would totally isolate from people. And even to the day that I did finally come to the Gatehouse, which I'll talk a little bit as we progress here, I would isolate. So if something went wrong, whether it be in a relationship or whatever, I just cut people off. No, not tell them why or anything. They must have thought I was strange too, right? But if they knew, maybe they would understand, maybe they wouldn't understand. But basically, that was how I carried myself. Right. And that's how I, not only did I hide my abuse, what happened to me, because I wasn't able to talk about it, but that's how I coped, right or wrong, right? There's no right or wrong when it comes to coping with what we deal with. Most people will not understand that unless they've had that experience. But at the same time, this is what kept me alive all these years, as maybe you can say the same for yourself, right? Yep. Whether it's addictions or isolation, all these sort of things, they compound. And, I am so grateful that I did find the Gatehouse because I was able to work on those things, which I did not ever recognize. When I talked in the beginning of our conversation, I talked about trust and boundaries, anger, addictions, all those things. I never saw them as being a problem. Yeah. And, when I talk about being a problem, the problems could be many, many different things. Everything from, I mentioned about isolation, not trusting people. And but actually applying that is what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, people would ask me to go to do things, and I would say no. I'm just not interested. Right.
Yeah.
I think the years going back where I would try to get involved with people and try to do things. I could do it, but it was always very, very hard because I always felt I was keeping a secret. Not that I needed to tell everybody and they need to know, but I always felt that I didn't belong and I felt out of place. As much as welcome as they might have, put that out to me and laid out the red carpet for me to try to make me feel welcome, I still never felt welcome.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It didn't really, really matter, right? And I just couldn't grasp that you like me, that you see me as a good person when I don't even see myself. So it comes down to self-worth, obviously, right, and a bunch of other things. But for the people that are struggling with childhood sexual abuse, I hope you get that what we're saying, because this was my reality, and maybe that's your reality too.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the struggles that I had that brought me to the Gatehouse, and I could go on for an hour about all the things I've done and the mental health things I tried to do for myself, which really didn't help me at all. And again, I want to keep away from the graphic stuff, but I think in the past where psychiatrists tried to help me,
right,
it never worked. Right, I'd rather they used to pump me up full of pills, made me numb. Well, I was numb already, right? So I got away from that. It was easy for me just to do the street drugs. At least I know what I was doing, and if I'm looking for a feeling, because and again, I'm speaking for myself. All I know is that I didn't understand my feelings. Right, I know I had feelings, but what do I do with those feelings?
Yes,
right. I knew I could be very angry. I definitely understood that, but trusting and boundaries and understanding who I am was just not there in the picture whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm coming back to the Gatehouse. Well, they helped me with that.
How did you actually find the Gatehouse?
Well, believe it or not, 14 years ago, the internet was still kind of coming into fruition at that time. Also it started more so in the 90s, but I mean, it was still coming into fruition to nothing like it is today. And I remember my first Google search I did, it actually wasn't even Google. It was Google. Google Chrome was one of the ones. Anyway, I did that search. I found Little Warriors out in Alberta.
Oh.
So I called them up, and they told me about the Gatehouse. Although now if I Google recovery for childhood sexual abuse, the Gatehouse comes up number one now.
Yes.
It does. It comes right up. But then Little Warriors came up. So anyway, they directed me to the Gatehouse, and at that time I came in. It was right around just before Christmas, 2010, and I did my first intake. I really didn't know what to think of it, of doing that. I filled out this form and asked me some personal information about my thoughts, my feelings. If I was on any medication, if I was seeing a therapist. Asked me if I've sought help elsewhere in the past. Questions kind of like that. Them trying to get to know me a little bit better. And then it's funny, I really didn't have many questions other than I just want to talk.
Yes.
Funny because they asked the questions. I didn't ask any questions at all other than help me.
Yes.
Right? So it's funny how that turned out.
Yeah.
Right? So I came in and did the intake process, and here I am today.
It's been, I don't know if it's called downhill. It's been downhill ever since. Been in a good sense.
Well, actually uphill. But
struggling. Yep.
Yes, but I mean it's it's funny. I won't say it's downhill, but I look at it as being uphill in a positive manner.
Yes,
because I went from down to up. Right, I was at my bottom. I hit rock bottom when I came here.
Yeah, I can understand.
And I will tell you this too. And I am 7 years completely clean from cocaine.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I need to say that. I mean, sure, I enjoy the odd drink from time to time now, but I never, and even then, alcohol has never really been a huge issue. Off and on it has, but I don't have to resort to that. So anyway, I'm clean from that. So it took me half my time here to finally stop that, start believing in myself.
Right.
So I struggled with it for the first years coming in here, off and on with the cocaine. And then I finally got off of it when I started believing in myself and actually started loving myself. See, I can say that.
Right.
As 7 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. Right? So that's a big thing for me to even say that.
That is a big step in your healing journey.
Huge step. Yeah. And to say that I love myself and I'm worthy and I'm deserving of so much more. And this is not an ego thing or anything like that. It's just about loving yourself.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then seeing your worth for what you really are.
Mm-hmm.
when you've been taught from a very young age that you're just a sex object, pardon the way I put that, but that's basically how I took it, and then taking that into my adulthood, not looking at sexuality in all the healthy ways as I do now, but again, that's one thing that wasn't mentioned. I talk about sexuality. Again, that's another topic we could talk about for an hour.
Oh, definitely.
Right? But the struggles with that. But again, that was another issue. But at the same time, when I talk about being going up in my life, when we talk about ups and downs, this has been the best up I've ever done in my life. And when I think about getting high, well, this is a really natural high for me because I could actually feel what I'm feeling.
Yes. Definitely.
Right? I feel anger, I feel sadness, I feel happiness, I feel struggle, but I'm able to place it and put it where it belongs for me, right? As before, I could never do that. Right. I when somebody says something to me, I can actually take a compliment now for, not everybody's out to get me.
Yes.
Right. And that's what I used to think. Right. I thought the government was after me. I thought, I couldn't trust anybody. Right. That was my thought process. Wrong as it was. Or rather, my perception was all wrong. And once I started believing in myself and beginning to feel what I truly feel and understand it, that's when things started to change for me.
Yeah.
And that Gatehouse helped me with that.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I guess I know that I have some questions, but one just popped up in my head. I've personally run into a few people that are just want to get into the Gatehouse and talk to somebody, but I find that they're very angry. They have this total misconception as far as they think that there's a cure for what we've been through because they don't want to keep remembering what happened. So I guess my question to you, Stewart, how would you sort of address this particular person that has come to you that is just saying it's extremely angry and they want a remedy today? How would you answer to this person?
That is a really good question because this question has been put across to us many, many times here at the Gatehouse over the years that I've been here. And right away I say, no, there's no magical cure. The magical cure is you wanting to better yourself. My process here at the Gatehouse, I've taken no pills. I've had no medication, especially when I came clean. See, the idea behind this process is that we need to feel to heal, right? So if I'm under the influence of any kind of drug, whether it be a clinical or a street drug, I'm not going to be able to feel.
That's right.
The only feeling I'm going to get is the numbness that they provided for me.
Correct.
So, no, there is no magical cure, and I've yet to hear from anybody, any clinician from any place, anywhere in the world that has a magical cure for this. My magical cure to that question was, I won't say it's talk therapy, but talking about my experience, talking with other survivors that have had this experience, talking about our ups and our downs, as we were just talking about, and finding strategies so that when we are going into a hole or the proverbial rabbit hole, that we can pull ourselves out of it and find some kind of level ground that we can work with. I can't speak for anybody, but I know is that my abuse continued a long time, and I've had multiple abusers, and I was left with a boatload of trouble, and I found a better way. Here I'm in my 60s now, right? So, I struggled pretty much all my life with all those things, and yet here I am coming in here just before I turned 50, and I figured my way with no pills or no special therapy. It's just talking about what happened to me in a safe place,
right?
And then working and finding coping strategies so that whenever I did have a bad day or whenever I was activated, that I could bring myself back down and realize, I'm all right. But the thing is, though, another thing I have to realize too, and this is a really big thing, I have to realize too, is that we were kids, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
So here we are as kids growing up, and we take on all this. It's my fault.
Yeah.
Right? And all the other things on top of that, depending on your experience. So it could be, it's all horrible anyway you look at it.
Yeah.
You can't put a meter on it.
you can't put a positive light or spin to this.
No, none whatsoever. It's just other than the fact that happened to you, and you're stuck with what happened to you as a child. And therefore, in society being as it is, everybody I've known that's had this experience, most of us have never had help until they became adults. Right? To whatever degree that might be. So whenever I see people come into the Gatehouse that are in their 20s or in their 30s, I'm going, yeah.
Yes.
Right? They're not waiting until most of their life is gone like I did.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And others have done the same thing because there was no help. Right? And this is the magical thing about this. I really believe that other people that have had this experience, and of course I'm going to be a little bit biased because I work here now too at the Gatehouse and been here all this time, but I'm a firm believer that, we don't always have to pop pills to sort it out. It's about talking about your experience.
Yes.
Right? And if you are in a place where you feel safe with other people and they're able to relate to you and vice versa, then I think people will get a lot more out of that than popping 20 pills and talk to you next week.
Yes.
Right? And then numbing that out. I did that all my life. I didn't even need pills to do that. I spent all my life numbing things out that I didn't even understand.
Yes.
Now I understand, right? So it takes it to a whole new level of thinking. Don't get me wrong. This has never been easy whatsoever.
No.
Right? I spent most of my lifetime being stuck. And that's precisely what I was. I was stuck. Stuck from beliefs that were passed down to me, which I had no idea how to control. Well, it has taken me coming to the Gatehouse and talking about those things and realizing that I was stuck, whatever degree that was. So, and in that, and all that time, that's where the growth started happening, because I was able to talk about, it's not so much about talking about the graphic details. It's just about talking about those thoughts and feelings behind that.
Yes.
Right? Why am I angry? So if you cut me off on the road, or we're walking down the sidewalk and you cut me off and I get angry, well, what the hell is that? What the hell is that coming from? It's a busy sidewalk. There's people walking on the sidewalk.
Yes.
You walk around people. Why would I get upset over something like that? That's just an idea. Or I drop a pencil on the floor and I get angry. Things like that, right?
You snap the pencil.
You snap the pencil. But for no apparent real reason. I dropped the pencil. Everybody drops pencils from time to time. People drop things on the floor. And not everybody gets angry. But I would get angry over the stupidest little things like that, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I get you. I've been there. And still at times today, I still get that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I have to step back and go, why? I don't understand why I lost it within an instant.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense, though. Like, we still have work to do, or I still have work to do. Yeah. Because, it's been pointed out to me, goes, well, you're doing great. And it's like, well, sometimes it's the mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about you, Stewart, but for myself, that mask sometimes comes off, sometimes it goes back on. Yeah. And this is where that continued struggle still for me, where I'm losing it. And I was like, I don't know why, because I used to be a very patient person. Mm-hmm. And so now to find myself not, that is also part of my struggle, where I'm trying to understand. Mm-hmm. So I totally get that.
But at least you're becoming aware. Right?
Yes.
And you see, this is the biggest part of the process here, folks. You need to understand is that you need to become aware of what you're thinking, feeling, how you react. So if you're able to do that, then that is the starting process of trying to change those things in your life. Right. You can't change something if you're not aware of what you're doing. You just know you're reacting. So you just react and don't understand the consequences after the fact, right? Whether it be emotional or connection or wherever that might be. Right. But it usually has some sort of effect. Well, especially if you're in a relationship, your partner will be going, what the beep is going on here?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Especially if they don't know what's going on with you to begin with.
Yes.
Or a stranger or a friend, if you react in a bad way. I know is that work was my great place to hide, because I would never react other than always in a professional manner. So I knew that my work was always my safe place. Never mind, it paid for my addictions, but it was also a place I could go and be something I wasn't.
Right.
I could hide.
Yep.
And a personality which I wasn't, my so-called subpersonality. Right? And really would I react, but outside work, that's where sometimes my reactions would not be, kosher.
Yes.
Right?
Not be the nicest way.
Not in the nicest way, right? Which got me into a lot of trouble a lot of times.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier and talked about coping strategies. So what coping strategies or support systems have been most helpful to you?
Well, thank God for the internet nowadays. But prior to that, I just, like, I think one of the first things I had to learn to do when I came to the Gatehouse in connecting with myself was learning how to ground myself. So here we are. We were just talking about how we react, right? Some personality, just overreacting, period. So that was one of the things I needed to learn right away. Was I needed to find coping strategies. And I think one of the very first things I did for my coping strategies so I wouldn't react was I went down to we're right down here at the lakeshore here today, but I went down to the water and actually down at Brown's Line, and I walked along the beach and I found a beautiful rock or stone. And it's an inanimate object. So for me, for the first 3 years I was here, I had a beautiful stone in my pocket. I put that stone back now. Okay. I'm hoping that somebody else will pick that up and do the same thing, right? Because it's not mine to begin with. It belongs to the earth. It belongs to the creator. So I put it back. And I'm hoping that somebody will do the same thing. But that little stone in my pocket, believe it or not, saved my ass more times than I can ever possibly think of. Because I was grasping. I was desperate. I needed something to start my journey so I can feel like I have some sort of emotional control over myself.
Right.
So that little stone in my pocket was my haven for the first 3 years that I was here, right? Because when I talk about reacting, that was always been an issue with myself, right? One of the bigger issues with myself. So that was my stepping stone for discovering who I am. Was, if I'm able to ground myself, then maybe I can go deeper into why I'm acting in those precarious ways over time, which was a big help. So that was my first thing I started doing, was learning how to ground myself. And when I talk about other coping strategies, well, I learned other CBT skills as well. Everything from, I talk about emotional regulation, for example. Well, again, it's another thing that we need to be aware of. So, okay, I reacted. So journaling, for example. So if I reacted, I would write that down. How did I react? What were the feelings associated with that? What did I do aftercare or not? Did I go numb myself after I reacted that?
Right.
Or did I just shut down? And what did I do? But I journaled. So I journaled my reactions and my feelings and my thoughts. And, as we've been talking about right from the beginning of our conversation, awareness is key to discovering who you really are. Especially if you've had that shoved down since you were a kid and you don't know that.
Right.
Well, here you are as an adult and you still don't know who you are. So it's going to be a bigger challenge than you were as a child, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Especially since you're all grown up and you have all these responsibilities and you're doing this and you're doing that already. And out of nowhere, this thing that happened to you as a child comes out of nowhere and you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of how it happened to me. So, coping strategies will never be the same for anybody. To your question, you need to look at it, research, and you may have to try a bunch of things until you find something that works, right? Like I did the stone for 3 years, and then the next thing I went into after that was I went into breathing, meditation.
Yep.
Right? I wasn't able to do that in the beginning.
That's where
my mind was too busy.
That was my first thing, and I still do it today.
Yeah. Well,
breathing exercises and meditation.
Yeah. When we talk about breathing, people say, well, they have a hard time to do that. And when they talk about meditation, well, there's several things you can do to combat that. And, one, you can leave your eyes open. You don't have to have your eyes closed because there's some guru on the internet showing you this is how you do it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Everybody's individual. Everybody has their own experience. And not everybody will close their eyes because maybe it scares the hell out of them.
It's
from their experience.
They don't want to trust what's their surroundings.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, even when we do meditations here at Gatehouse, we always tell people, if you feel uncomfortable, leave your eyes open, fixate them onto something, something in front of you. Maybe your shoes, the floor,
an object.
Plant, an object, right? It's about finding the five senses. Again, that's another thing you could do.
Yep.
Your coping strategies when you get triggered. Get your five senses working.
Mm-hmm.
Smell, touch, hearing, seeing. All those things.
Right.
And just to bring you back from being activated, right? So, or your coping strategy, it's a coping strategy. But it's being able to identify them is the tricky part.
Yeah.
Right? Because we spent our lifetime, or rather I spent my time hiding in my crap. So it was a feat. It took a lot of work just to figure out what they were.
Right.
right? And not only that, but also to admit them, right? You got to take ego out of this because there is no ego. It's about what you're truly feeling, and then identifying it, and then chasing after that. So I've spent a lifetime, I spent my time here at the Gatehouse, I should say, doing that, and it's paid off for me. Like I was diagnosed with CPTSD, and if you know anything about that, I was all over the map, right? And it was hard to stick with things because, well, obviously I don't trust people, I don't trust things, I don't trust the process, so I had to learn. Another thing I did, which was very, very helpful for me, is we talk about journaling. So I've written my story probably 5 or 6 times now.
Wow. And
the outcome has always been different at the end. Yes, initially, this is why I'm here. The beginning is always the same, but the ending has always progressed. When we talk about ups and downs again, I finished on a high note. And hence why I'm here, like today, right? And I'm able to talk about it as freely as I am. And that is my up, right? So those coping strategies I did to help monitor myself when I was outside the house were so helpful. But you need to ask questions and you need to do the work. You can't, you can come to the house and we can present it to you, but if you don't do the work on yourself, then you're not going to notice any changes.
Correct.
So for the first 7 years, it was a real struggle for me to do the work. So for me, grabbing that stone, that was a big thing for me to do, because it helped keep me grounded when I had no grounding to begin with.
Did it symbolize something for you, that little stone?
When I think about it, it probably has. To what degree, I'm not too sure, other than when I take my shoes off and I put my feet on the ground, and aside from, pardon the pun where I put this, it grounds me out. But I think it brought me closer to who I really am, if that answers your question. Whatever that might have been at the time.
Yes.
But it's always constant change. And from your own experience, as you grow, things get different. Like things change, like all along. Not just your thought process, but your thought process towards yourself.
Right.
When you think towards yourself. And I like to think that everybody who's working on themselves, that when I talk about going up, that gets higher and higher. Even if you get knocked down 20 steps and you get back on off your ass and back on your feet and climb those 20 steps again, you'll probably go 30 steps the next time.
Right.
And that's been what it's been like with me. But no magical cures. None. It's just talking about it, understanding that there's things you can do to combat those thoughts and feelings of wanting to run away. There's people you can talk to now. You don't have to stay isolated. Man or woman, right? Men now, there's no excuses. There's help out there. You can talk to people. They're willing to listen.
Right.
And without telling you what to do at the same time. Right. So, if you do your research and you know what you want, and I would suggest anybody who's seeking help. Sorry about that, folks. I can't even shut that off because we're in the office here, so it'll stop in a moment. But
sorry about that.
It's just so you understand, folks. I dragged Sergio out, and he's come here to the Gatehouse office, and that's where we were sitting in the office. So that's the only ring. It's gone. But anyway, I had Sergio come to the Gatehouse today, and that's where we are right now. We just happen to be in the office in the phone rings.
No worries.
Little distraction.
No worries.
But anyway, so all those things are so very important. Like even the breathing. Like it can be so simple. Like box breathing, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? But just slow and calmly.
That's right.
And you don't need to go see a professional to do it. You can practice at home. You can go on YouTube. You can find all kinds of things that you can do to help yourself. See, you got to understand, too, by coming here to the house, for example, as you know, we had to help ourselves. They have a program. It's structured, 15 weeks. And we talk about all those things I talked about in the beginning, trust, anger. We talk about inner child. We talk about shame and guilt. We talk about loss and grief. Inner child, 3 weeks. Tough things to talk about.
Yep.
We talk about addiction, sexuality. We also talk about also too that when we're near the end, we also talk about your journey continuing, right? So our spiritual path.
Yes. And
I'm not talking about religion.
Yep.
Oh boy, I tell you. Oh my gosh. We talk about our spiritual journey, and again, we don't incorporate religion into that. It's a general term for kind of what we're talking about when we talk about coping skills. So, if you remember about pause, for example, right?
Yep.
Paying attention, unrevealed sacred experiences. And that was another thing that I picked up was helpful, which we still apply today in groups. Like even yesterday, last night, when I'm currently co-facilitating a phase 2 group.
Okay.
And we're into week 8, so now we're really implementing pause, which we do in the phase 2. So every week we ask our participants when we do a check-in, have you applied pause from the week when we talked? And 9 times out of 10, people have.
Yes.
Right? Don't get angry. Think about what you're thinking before you react. Right? And those are wonderful tools that you can do that don't cost you any money. It's you can do on your own, and nobody even knows about it.
Correct.
Right? Your secret is still safe with you.
Yeah.
If that's an issue.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
And that's the beautiful about all these things I've been talking about. Nobody needs to know what you're doing, why or anything. If you want to tell somebody, that's totally up to you. But all I know is that when I did it, nobody knew what I was doing.
Yep.
And I was able to keep some sort of emotional regulation with myself.
Yep. I agree.
So that's kind of how those are my coping strategies.
Okay. Those were good ones too.
Mm.
In what ways have you seen personal growth or positive change in yourself as a result of your journey?
Well, I kind of touched base on this a little bit earlier, but I think the biggest thing was beginning to like myself, love myself. Forgive me if I bring a tear to my eye right now, but
it's okay.
That has, I spent most of my life not liking myself. So anybody who's had this experience and you hate yourself right now from what happened to you and you don't totally understand what's going on, I really hope you find help someplace so you can, like I have. Loving yourself is a really hard thing to do when you've never done it before. So as an adult, learning that, I think that is probably one of the hardest struggles, I think, for anybody as an adult to learn when you didn't learn it from childhood. Right? So
yep.
I think that was my biggest struggle, aside from all the other things. But that was my float or my ride to be where I am now, to elevate myself even further to where I am and what I'm doing, all the things I do at the Gatehouse. If I didn't love myself, I would not have the capacity to do what I'm doing. I would not have the capacity to talk to other people to the level that I do. And but first, I have to take care of myself in order for that to happen. Well, I've done that, and that's what I'm doing now. So loving yourself, and I'm sure people who are listening to this are going, what the heck is he talking about?
Yeah.
Like, really, that is key. You don't have to use the word love. Like I tell a lot of other men and women, you don't have to use the word love. Just start with like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Love is a really strong word, and especially if you've had bad experience with it. Love, what the hell is love? So I say use the word like. And when you progress and you start to realize that you are a really decent person, decent human being that you are, and you're only a victim of the circumstances of what happened to you,
right?
That will change. So to your question, that's what I had to do for myself.
Yeah. And
it was not easy.
In all honesty, I struggled with that as well, to love myself, which I do today. But I had, and I haven't come across anybody else with the same situation, but I have a lot of similarities as my perpetrator. And so I say similarities because we look similar.
Okay.
So for the longest time, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me. I saw my perpetrator, which in turn, I hated myself. And in turn, I put myself down. And in turn, to somewhat extent, today, I still call myself an idiot at times, or not a good-looking person. It's one of those things that I'm still working on myself. But it's been difficult. It was difficult. Today, I can actually look at myself and see me. I no longer think or see that other person, which I always refer to that person as the sperm donor.
Yeah.
And so that's been my struggle.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it. See, folks, they're listening here. See, this is an example of just the question that Sergio just asked me about loving yourself. See, those are the steps that you need to take to figure this stuff out. There's no magical cure from anybody.
There's no pill.
No pill. You need to talk about what happened to you. Somebody safe.
Yeah.
Right. That understand that. Well, I won't say understands because everybody has their own experience, but gets it.
Yeah.
And once you find that safe place to talk about it and you start working on these things will start to change, just as you described yourself. Looking in a mirror, I think for most of us that have had this experience, it's not a good thing.
No.
Right? Not a good thing at all.
No.
Not a good thing. I struggled with the mirror too, the same way like you did. I can look in the mirror now, like I can shave myself and not like cuss myself at the same time now. Yeah. But it took me a lifetime to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I don't longer have it, but I had a little sticker by the mirror saying, "I am worthy."
There's nothing wrong with self-affirmations.
I use that for that specific reason for affirmation, because otherwise I'd be looking at myself going, "You're an idiot. Okay, you're an ugly MF, and you're stupid. You're a waste of human being because you're damaged." Yeah. These are the constant thoughts that were going through my head before. Yeah. And so today, like I said, if I can look at myself and go, on the average, I'm probably average looking. Not according to my wife. She says I'm the most beautiful man she's ever seen. That's different. Yeah. But it's hard to accept those compliments. I can actually say thank you for that compliment. Where before it was like, that's not, pardon my French, but that's not fucking true. I'm the ugliest motherfucker you've ever seen. Yeah. So again, it's that breakthrough that you're making, and that's the healing of journey. Yeah. The journey of healing, should I say. But and that's where people, I think, struggle a lot is how fast can I get to the finish line? Well, in this healing of journey, or this journey to healing, there is no finish line. It's constant, and we have to keep going. Yeah.
But it's constant, but at the same time, there is a spot where you'll get to, which I call a sweet spot.
Yes.
Right. And that's where, as I just described about loving myself or liking myself. Like I've got to that sweet spot so that even with my ups and downs, I can navigate through that now, where before I never could.
I agree with you. Yep. I guess we've gone quite a bit, and I know that I normally keep these podcasts between 30 and 40 minutes or so, and we've gone over that by a little bit, and it's not a big deal because this is such a good conversation.
It is wonderful. I'm so happy you have me here today. Thank you.
Yeah, same here, and I'm glad you made the time for me, which is very special for me. So, how can others support you in achieving your aspirations?
In what way do you mean? I'm sorry.
Whatever goals and dreams you have, how can other people support you to achieve those dreams?
Well, I have a hard time asking people for that sort of thing, right? Other than, support the cause, right? Support others if you know others that have gone through this experience. Do your research. I think most people do not know or understand what's behind all this. I mean, I think this is still a very taboo subject in most cultures, even here in the West.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So if I want someone to support me, first I would say, well, support the Gatehouse. But for me, I would say, ask those questions. Ask your friends if they're feeling down. Maybe they trust you well enough, they might want to talk to you. Yeah. Right? And it's not about you telling them what to do. It's about just listening.
Yes.
Right? You can't tell somebody whether they're a survivor of childhood sexual abuse or anybody who's gone through any type of heavy trauma. You can't tell them what to do.
No.
Because that's not what they're asking.
No.
They just want someone to listen. So if I'm going to ask somebody what I want for me, this is what I would ask of you to do for others to help others.
And just to clarify, there's two types of listening.
Yeah.
There's listening,
yes,
and then there's listening to give an answer.
That's right.
And so it's important that you listen and listen without any questions or judgment. Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but myself, if I'm opening up to somebody, I can immediately tell by their expressions on their face if I'm being judged or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that.
And so that's where, as soon as I see that, my wall goes up higher than the CN Tower. And there's no way you can ever knock that back down again. Yeah. And so that is the trust that we want to, but it's how you react is whether I'm going to continue to lower that wall and continue to trust you and give you everything that I really want that relationship to be. So it's truly important. I would have to agree with you. Listening is all. And for me, I don't know about you, Stewart, but I've gone through quite a bit in reference of people constantly throwing these myths at me. And I've had 2 episodes ago, I actually put the top 10, what I consider to be the top 10 things you should never say to somebody who's a survivor of CSA. And I...
A good list, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I actually had about 8 or 9 of those actually said to me. And people are going, well, how? Why would they say stuff like that? It is because of it's a myth. It is maybe they heard that from a friend or a parent, but you wouldn't read that anywhere.
Yeah.
So that is passed along. And that is the breakthrough that I'm trying to break. It's not just the myth, but stopping from people spewing out things that are not accurate.
That's right.
And so it's the myth, it's the silence as well. It's because the silence is the killer. We keep everything inside. It still is, right? Yeah. So anyway, Stewart, I wanted to thank you for making the time and being here today. So just to wrap things up today, I want to again extend my heartfelt thanks to Stewart from the Gatehouse and the Gatehouse. The Gatehouse, believe it or not, I've been with them, I think, about 4 years. I don't know if you remember, Stewart, you did my intake.
Yes.
I will never forget that because I still remember all those questions you were asking.
Yeah.
And but we hope that this discussion has shed some light on the challenges and resilience surrounding childhood sexual abuse. Once again, if you or someone you know has been affected by CSA, please remember that support is available. You can reach out to the Gatehouse at 416-255-5900 or the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673 or call 911 for help at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Your well-being matters, and it's important to take care of yourself and seek professional support when you need it. We encourage you to continue the conversation, raise awareness, and advocate for change in your community. Thank you again for listening to The Courage Zone. We appreciate your attention and compassion, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.